about EvidenceAid. We deliberately reduced a large portion of sponsorship, and we're very grateful for a donation that was made to us that allowed us to produce this material. So please do take extra copies, please do take them back and share them with colleagues. Just contextual slides. Millions of people are affected every year by disasters, billions of dollars are spent. People and organisations want to do things that will lead to better protection, less death, injury and damage, quicker recovery. But, and we've heard this already, just doing something is our natural human response, but doing something is not enough. It needs to do more good than harm. Decision makers need to know what interventions, actions and strategies work, which ones don't work so they can avoid them, which ones are unproven and might be subject of research, or might not be might not be used with as much confidence as some people think they should be used, and which, no matter how well-meaning, might be harmful. And we've heard the example from Fafab on the pre-debriefing. People need to make well-informed choices and decisions. They need access to reliable evidence. So these are all background to why do we need EvidenceAid. But all of those points are why do we need reliable evidence in health and social care anyway. There's nothing peculiar about disasters, and there should be nothing about disasters and humanitarian emergencies that are regarded as not as important as routine health and social care. The concept of evidence in health and social care routinely is now well established. We should be demanding the same, and those of us who are researchers should be presenting the same in a disaster and humanitarian context. So background, already mentioned, 26th of December 2004, the Indian Ocean tsunami. Trying to improve access to reliable information and thinking about expanding beyond healthcare interventions to other things that affect the health of people, of communities, to the things that affect the recovery of communities and societies. And aiming to help people make well-informed decisions, not trying to tell them what to do, trying to give them the information that they can then use to make their decision. Providing knowledge in resource-poor settings generally, we've heard about the challenges of generating reliable research evidence in the places where it is needed, and that holds true for where the major disasters and humanitarian emergencies happen, but it also holds true on where many of the major problems facing health and social care around the world are. We need knowledge in those resource-poor settings, and we need to hear the encouragement, such as we've heard from Santa, for research to be done in those settings by the people who will need to use that research, so that it is helpful to them and their colleagues when they make decisions. And the aim is to save lives and reduce morbidity and get people back to whatever degree of normality can be got back to after a disaster or humanitarian emergency, to get back to that sense of normality as quickly as possible. 10 years on, where are we? For the first 6 years or so, there was no dedicated funding for EvidenceAid. EvidenceAid was there, we were in the background. If something major happened, we might try and bring resources together. We would work with Wiley Blackwell to provide open access to the entire Cochrane Library, free one-click access to the entire contents of the Cochrane Library in those places affected by major disasters. And then the point came where we said either we can continue in the background, and when something major happens, such as the Haiti earthquake, then we can respond by bundling resources, but after 48 hours we have to get back to our normal jobs. Or shall we try and actually build something more sustainable, more substantial? Funding obtained from Cochrane Collaboration, John Wiley and Sons, Bordicus and Paul McBain Foundation allowed us to begin bringing the staff team together. 2013, last year, the work was recognised with the Unorthodox Prize and then some further funding from the Lambert Family Foundation. And again, still at the moment, evidence aid is not resourced to the level it needs to be resourced to really do the job. But we are working to make this a serious job. This is not a hobby in our spare time. It should not be trying to scale it up. And just, I mentioned this is the third international conference. The first conference was in September 2011, partnership with the Centre for Evidence-Based Medicine in Oxford, and thought about the needs assessment survey. You're going to hear about some of these things from Bonix in more detail. So what, do people need it? Yes, they clearly need it. Second conference in association with the Belgian Red Cross Flanders took place in Brussels in October 2012, 100 participants, and an agreement there that it's clear that the Evidence Aid project is needed. What should be the priorities for the review? Again, you're going to hear more about that in a moment. Step back slightly just to frame what Evidence Aid does, and to repeat some of the things and to reinforce some of the things that you've already heard. We are about trying to provide information on the effects of interventions, actions, and strategies. We rely heavily on systematic reviews for that because of the virtues of those reviews. And this, to a large extent, it's irrespective of what the underlying study design might be. But if we have other questions about effects, then the randomised trial is not necessarily the most appropriate design. But the challenge for us as reviewers is to make sure that we choose the most appropriate designs. We make use of research already done. Reviews are retrospective. They look back at research that has already been done. They can highlight the gaps for future research, but they are primarily making use of what has already been done, and therefore they can maximise the power of that research, maximise the power of the conclusions. But they do rely on other people having already done the necessary research. And our role for Evidence Aid is to advocate for that research, but our role is not. We're not out there conducting this new prospective research. So what's Evidence Aid doing in relation to systematic reviews? Identifying them, conducting and updating them where necessary. That may well be something that Evidence Aid increasingly does in the future, but certainly advocating and facilitating reviews done by others. Evidence Aid, however big Evidence Aid might get as a team, it's not going to ever be in a position to do all of the reviews that are needed. Now, those reviews are being done and will be done by other people. Contextual summaries, reviews of evidence that is not research that was generated in the disaster context. We need to think about how you might use that in the disaster context, because that may be a better guide to a decision maker than telling them no research has been done in disasters, sorry, I can't help. There is research that may be applicable, and we need to work with experts to say how might that be applicable. Bring it together in a readily accessible, easily searchable repository, helping to resolve uncertainties. Primarily, we would say that's underpinning it. If there's certainties out there, and those certainties are based on reliable experience or knowledge or evidence, we don't need to provide information. What we need to do is provide information when people are uncertain, when they don't know. Currently, one of the access ports to Evidence Aid is through what are called special collections. I'm just going to highlight one particular example there, which is the Water for Wound Cleansing Cochrane Review, and that's the summary on the screen of that review. And the relevance of the contextual summary to this is this review is not based on research done in a disaster context. It's based on research done probably in not very busy institutional settings, hospital settings, and so on. And it concludes, for those settings, that drinkable tap water is as good as sterile saline for cleaning wounds, and in fact, we're not even sure whether or not we need to clean. These are simple wounds, these are not dirty wounds, these are simple wounds, simple clean wounds. But the challenge on the contextual summary in a disaster context is if you had a choice between using the drinkable water and the sterile saline bags, what would you use to clean wounds? Well, there's probably better things you can use the drinkable water for. If that's limited, maybe we should be using sterile saline. But that's the evidence. Then the decision makers can think about how to use that evidence. What we don't want is decision makers who are uncertain, not having access to the evidence, or decision makers having in their minds the wrong information. So where does it go from here? Well, one of the possibilities is to recognise that there's more to well-informed decision-making than the effects of interventions, actions, and strategies. You need to know, this slide is going to build up with sources of evidence, in quotation marks, sources of data, information. You need to know what is available. You need to know what is in that box. You need to know that that box has arrived. And echoing Pratap's points, we don't want that box to contain clothing that we don't need. If that box contains clothing that we don't need, it's probably blocked some space on an aeroplane that was bringing it in. It's probably blocking space in the logistics of organising the delivery of material, and it's blocking space at the side of the airstrip. And as Pratap has mentioned, that may need to be destroyed at some point because it's just a waste of space, waste. So we need to know what's in the box, and we need to put the right things in the boxes. We need to know who is there, what personnel are available, what should those personnel be doing. We need to know what the challenges being faced are or are likely to be, because it's no good presenting evidence to people about interventions or actions or strategies for conditions and problems that are not there in that disaster or humanitarian emergency. That is a waste of time. Asking them to look at documents that are irrelevant is a waste of time. And then we need the systematic review, and the little example of a Cochrane review, but there are reviews that are not Cochrane reviews that will be used in evidence aid. The little plus sign on that is to say, well, actually, it needs a little bit more than the regular review. It needs something to do with context. And if you can bring all of that knowledge together, then you can present to people information on the available, the needed, and the effective interventions, actions, and strategies. So just my final slide, and then I'm going to hand over to Claire Allen, the Knowledge Manager of EvidenceAid. Where is EvidenceAid going as we enter its second decade? Well, it needs to expand and it needs to strengthen. That is going to help people in natural disasters and humanitarian emergencies to choose the effective strategies and to avoid those that are ineffective. The use of ineffective interventions, actions, and strategies waste time, waste money, waste goodwill, and even worse, can expose people that you're trying to help to harm. So we need to know what's effective, and we need to avoid what's ineffective. It will provide evidence for resource poor settings more generally. And that's a spin-off benefit of EvidenceAid, is that the information that we found in the resource constrained environment of disaster and humanitarian emergency has other uses. And I will state that it will save lives. I won't speculate that it might save lives, because as a researcher, not as a practitioner, I firmly believe that the research we've engaged in inside EvidenceAid and across from EvidenceAid is about saving lives, and that it will save lives, will reduce mortality, will enable people and communities to recover more quickly and efficiently. That's where EvidenceAid is going. We're really pleased to have you all here with us today to think about meeting some of those challenges and to help deliver some of those promises. So I'm going to hand over to Claire, who is going to talk to us about the knowledge management side of EvidenceAid, and then we'll hear from Bonix in relation to the priorities. So Claire, let's come up. Bonix, switching slides.